Alright, so look, I wanted to make a quick video talking about the relationship between neurodivergence and capitalism. And it does look like it's about to rain here soon, so I'm going to try to speed through this video pretty quickly, because I'd much rather record this video outside than inside. So let's go. So for starters, I just wanted to make this video because I am neurodivergent myself, and I am vividly aware of how the system of capitalism affects me on a daily basis. So with that being said, I can imagine that other people have a similar experience. So I just wanted to make a video between capitalism and neurodivergence, because I don't think that a lot of people really have connected the two things. We have this rise in neurodivergence. We have this rise in cases of ADHD and autism and other forms of neurodivergence. We have this rise in neurodivergence that happens at the same time as the rise in capitalism. In fact, the greater the capitalistic society seems to get, the more cases of neurodivergence we seem to find. But why is the question? So let's start with the basics. Capitalism is a system that prioritizes profits over people. It values efficiency, productivity, and compliance. And the ideal worker in a capitalist society is somebody who can show up on time, somebody who can sit for hours, somebody who can follow instructions, somebody who can work under pressure, somebody who can produce consistent results, and somebody who can do all of that without complaining. So at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, what happens to the people whose brains don't work that way? What happens to the people whose brains won't allow them to comply that way? Because here's the thing. People with ADHD and other forms of neurodivergence often struggle with time management. We often struggle with repetitive tasks. We often struggle to stay focused on tasks that feel meaningless. And it's not because we lack intelligence. It's not because we're dumb. It's because our brains are wired differently. Our brains are wired to seek meaning, to seek novelty, to seek stimulation. And then we have people with autism who process sensory information entirely differently. Autistic people think in patterns, and autistic people tend to have a deep focus on real specific things. But as a consequence, they may struggle in overstimulating environments, or with social expectations that prioritize small talk over substance. And it's just crazy because in a different kind of world, these neurodivergent traits, they will be seen as a strength. But in a capitalistic world, they're seen as problems. And those problems get medicalized. And in order to really understand this, we have to take this all the way back to school. Most of our school systems were designed in the 1800s. And that school system was originally meant to prepare children for factory life. That's what all the rows of desks was about. That's what all the strict schedules was about. That was the psychological reasoning behind putting the bell in the school. That's why in the schools they emphasize memorization over exploration. And that's not education, that's conditioning. The children who move too much or ask too many questions or learn in non-linear ways get flagged, get in trouble, get sent to the principal's office, get pulled to the side. They get referred, they get labeled. And once that label sticks, those kids think that there's something wrong with them. I know from the very moment that I was diagnosed, from that moment on, I felt like there was something wrong with me. But in the back of my mind, I always wondered, is there really something wrong with me? Or is there really something wrong with the environment that made me this way? You know what I'm saying? So let's be clear. Capitalism doesn't just punish neurodivergence. Capitalism creates the conditions to make neurodivergence more visible, and in some cases even more severe. When you think about all the overstimulation from the screens, from the ads, from the noises, and the constant alerts. When you think about the poor nutrition, access to low quality foods, especially in low income neighborhoods. When you think about the rising rates of childhood trauma, because this capitalist society creates all these desperate situations that turn normal, average, everyday people into monsters, which leads to the rise in cases of childhood traumas. When you think about the underfunded schools and the underpaid teachers, not just underpaid teachers, but overloaded teachers. When you think about the workplaces that value output over well-being, all of those things create the conditions that make neurodivergence more visible and in some cases even more severe. All of this affects brain development. All of this affects attention, behavior, and emotional regulation. And the more pressure we put on human beings to fit into an inhumane model of success, the more we break down, because we weren't made to live like this. The system of capitalism is anti-human. The system of capitalism creates an overstimulating and toxic society. At a certain point, we have to acknowledge the rise in neurodivergence is not just a mental health crisis. This is a system crisis. There is something that is wrong with the system that is making all these cases of neurodivergence. And for all the people out there who are like me, who are neurodivergent, who are told that they think too deeply or feel too much or have a problem with conformity, just like I have to realize that there's nothing wrong with you. Neurodivergence is not a flaw in your human biology. It is a response to the pressure, to the pollution, to the noise, and numbness of modern day life in this capitalistic society. It is a signal that the world that we live in, the world that we built, is not working for most people. And if this system calls that a disorder, then just maybe it's the system that needs the diagnosis.